Hello, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Zulf Talks podcast. Working for yourself, it's an amazing area to be in, and there's loads of people doing it at the moment. So, this podcast is powered by trustedcreators.org. I am Zulf. Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me on this episode. You would have already seen by the title, we're looking at web design, graphic design. So, should you hire a professional web designer or should you do it yourself? That's the type of area we're touching today. And we will be looking at a few different areas along this to see what are the benefits. And there's some great people out there doing great work, but can you do it yourself is the main area. And today I have a guest as well. So you're lucky you're going to have a lovely lady today. My guest today thought she would be a fashion designer. She found out she didn't really fancy that. So instead, she found herself becoming a graphic designer. She spent a bit of time working for herself, a couple of years, and now she works for a company, and we're going to pick her brains around graphic design and a few other areas. Hello, Sydney Ling, and welcome to the show.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. We know you were away for a little bit. We planned this for last week, but I know you went on a camping trip and it didn't go too well. You got the flu, and how are you keep getting on now?
I'm doing well now. Thank you for asking. So, I was out and forgot to get my flu shot before I went. So everyone get your flu shot.
Definitely. How was the camping trip though? Did it work out well?
Oh, it was awesome. It's beautiful. It's fall here in Atlanta, and so fall is probably my favorite time to be outdoors and camping. The temperatures are great, and it's a beautiful area. So I had an awesome time, even though I had to stay in bed for a couple days afterwards.
Wow. Okay. So probably worth it. I think you had a nice break and then you had a bit of time to recover. So it worked out okay for you.
It worked out fine.
Okay, so I'm hoping today we're going to use you to help us understand this a little bit better. So with the listeners on the podcast, they've got a mixture of people who like to listen in. Some prefer doing things themselves, but sometimes it can be helpful to have like a pro like yourself to just basically come and do it for us, because there's some things we don't think about that would be essential. So are you able to give me a little breakdown in terms of, firstly, you do two elements. So can you give me a bit of a breakdown on graphic design, UI design, and how that fits together?
Yeah, so I am a graphic designer and a front-end developer. I do UI UX design, which is user interfaces and user experience design. And then I also build websites, build web applications on the quote-unquote front end. The front end means that I'm not getting the website to work. That's somebody else's job. I'm here to make things look nice, and everything that you click on a website is something that I might have a hand in. So in terms of what a website is, an analogy that I like to use is, let's pretend a website is a house. HTML is the walls and the doors and the actual physical stuff in the house. CSS is the color and the decor, the art and the rugs that you put in each room. And then JavaScript or some other actual coding language is what makes the website work. It's what makes it's the electricity through the house, and it's what makes the website work. It is the AC and the refrigerator and stuff like that. So in terms of what I do all of that stuff, but I don't do the public works. I don't do the sewer of the house, the thing that is going to, the actual getting the electricity to the house. I just plug things into the outlets. So with JavaScript, I just make sure that, when you click a button, something actually happens. And then when it comes to graphic design and UI UX design, I am here to help someone take an idea and turn it into a visual representation of that idea. The core part of what graphic design is a way to visually communicate with people outside of just text and words. It is making sure that, when you see a logo, it shouts, hey, this is a soft drink company and not a car company, when you're looking at the difference between Coca-Cola and Honda. And that difference is subtle, but it's often really important. And it's not something that everybody always thinks about.
Wow. Okay. That's a nice overview. So it's basically like you explained it. So the domain name, all that would have been done in advance. That's like the setup phase, but then you would get involved in the more actual doing of the setting up of the site. What's your favorite bit out of that? Which one do you have a favorite?
Well, the reason that I do what I do is because I love them both and I need them both. I am someone who I like to do art. I like to sing and stuff like that, but I also like hiking and camping and video games. And the same applies for my professional life. I really like having the balance between something technical, coding, and something that is creative, like graphic design. So if I do too much of one versus the other for too long, I get burnt out very quickly. So it works out very well for me that I get to do both.
That's really exciting then, because like you mentioned, sometimes doing the same thing over and over again, it gets a little bit boring. So you've got the luck of having both to look at, and also you can see how nice it would be for somebody, because sometimes handing off to someone else and then you have to explain, it's like a bit more detailed, whereas if you're doing both, you know how you've set one up and it nicely links together. So that's a nice explanation of it to help our viewers and listeners understand it. And thank you to our live listeners. Thanks for they caught the live session. They're really happy today. So for those listening on the podcast, we have got a vodcast of this at the same time. So we actually have, if you have Spotify with video, you can see the video element of this. So jump onto the YouTube channel. And today, as we are covering web design and elements about doing it yourself, what would you say you should think about if we were to hire someone in? So for example, if I'm thinking about, I've got a website I can do with an overhaul, what are some key points to think about before I hire someone in?
Well, I think the question to ask yourself is just how big this project is. The only time I ever recommend somebody doing a website for themselves as a person who does not have any understanding of website stuff is if you can get away with using tools that are available to everyone. So Squarespace, Wix, websites like that, those are called CMSs, content management systems. They allow you to build your website using what is called a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And that means that you can drag and drop. It is fully visual and there's no coding on the back end. If you are somebody who doesn't know HTML, that's great. You can use that. But if you are somebody who needs further integrations beyond what Squarespace, Wix, Shopify, GoDaddy website builder, if you need something more than what those guys offer, then you need somebody who is a professional. If you are going to be doing something like PPC ads, pay per click ads, which is something that Google offers. If you're doing any native advertising, which is like BuzzFeed articles that are sponsored. If you are really doing these complicated integrations and looking for SEO optimization, which is search engine optimization, then you really want to start bringing in the professionals. There are a lot of things going on in terms of getting your website from the URL and from your computer being and making it to an actual consumer. There are lots of little pieces that have to come together very well. And it's anything from your e-commerce platform, where you are ranking on Google and what keywords you're ranking for, and just the user experience of going through your website. So if you have a website that is going to be what's called static content, it's text and images that don't really need to be updated very frequently, that are there for information purposes, but don't necessarily have any interactive capabilities, then sure, go ahead, build your own website. In fact, I implore that you do, because it's always great to see people getting better at the way that they interact with the internet. But if you're someone who really needs SEO optimization, if you need an e-commerce platform, if you need ad integrations and all that stuff, I recommend reaching out. And when I say reaching out, I don't necessarily mean you have to hire a whole marketing company to build you a website from ground up. I mean, you can post on Facebook, see if you know somebody and hire them. Please don't ask just to pay them in credit in your Instagram post or anything like that, because we are a legitimate industry and we got to eat. But if you are looking to build a website, you don't necessarily have to hire the most expensive person that you can possibly find. There are plenty of people out there who'd be happy to help you.
Okay, excellent. So you've said quite a lot of valuable information there. So if you're listening to this episode today and you're thinking, what is she going on about? Then maybe you need to hire someone to do it for you, because quite a few terms that you mentioned there, which I understood because I've done a little bit of this. But if someone's totally new to it and they're not even sure what e-commerce is, CEO, any of these terms, then it might be good for you to maybe get someone to, well, basically do it for you, because these are some initial terms that you need to be able to have a basic aspect and holding on. Coming back to some of the points you mentioned there. So, for example, you can hire someone to make a website for you, but it can be challenging because sometimes people aren't able to explain what they actually want. So, how do you deal with that kind of situation?
A good designer is going to know how to ask you the right questions. And that's something that you can kind of gauge right when you hire someone. If they're saying that they need you to do absolutely everything except actually putting the images and stuff on the website, then you might want to reconsider your partnership. Um, if I am going into a new partnership with someone, I have what I call my kickoff questions. They're pretty simple things like, how many pages do you want on your website? Well, if someone doesn't know what pages they could even have, then I can go back further and say, all right, do you need a home page? Do you need an about page? Do you need a contact page? Um, and so those questions are geared specifically to help people who aren't necessarily creative or aren't necessarily web minded figure out exactly what they need. And there are lots of theories behind how people can best work with somebody who doesn't necessarily know what they need. And they go from hand holding to filling out a questionnaire to having an agile, I won't even go that far, having weekly meetings and making sure that what you're delivering is what is needed and wanted by the client. But there's probably no right answer there. The best answer is going to be finding someone that you work well with, who asks the right questions and who is able to basically reiterate what you said you wanted in the designer speak, using those words like content management system and search engine optimization. Yeah, I hope that answers it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So thank you. I've got a question here from a live guest. So logo design and how that fits into the overall experience. Do you work with that side of things as well?
I do. Yeah. So go ahead.
So the logo side of it, because what they're basically saying is a very important part of the process for the customers and having a right logo to explain what they're about. So I presume
Absolutely.
you can give a bit.
Yeah, I am fully in agreement. And there are a lot of people out there who are very cavalier, in my opinion, with their logo design. A logo is the first thing a customer can potentially see that will ingrain a first impression of your company into their mind. Coca-Cola, great example. Everyone knows the Coca-Cola logo, and it speaks to the timelessness of this soft drink. It speaks to the refinement of it. It's not necessarily just a gas station soft drink. It's a soft drink that you can get at every restaurant everywhere. It's global. It speaks a lot. It has a lot to say. And it's not something that someone's going to see on a billboard somewhere and say, wow, that logo has a lot to say, but they are going to remember it. And that's what's really important. The memorability of a logo is a culmination of a lot of different pieces. It is whether or not your logo represents what your company does. It is whether the colors are evoking the right emotions. It is whether the typeface, the font that you're using is accurate for your industry. And there's tons and tons of things that go into it. A logo design can be really, really complicated if you are hiring someone who knows how to make it complicated. And I would always recommend finding someone who knows how to do that, because a logo should stick with you for the entire life of your company. There are 7-ish reasons why a company should ever rebrand, and they include reasons like controversy or if you've been bought, a huge overhaul in the way that your company is structured. These are not things that we should be planning for and hoping for in the long run. We want to have an image that will be long lasting and communicative for the entire life of the company.
Yes. Okay. That's a nice overview and answer to that. Thank you. Now, looking at the designer side of it, do you need to have a graphic designer as well as a website designer, or is it okay to have one person that can do both?
So I am unfortunately a little bit more rare of a find in terms of what I do professionally. There are plenty of people who do graphic design and web development, but not as many as there are people who do one or the other. So it's been great for me in the long run. It means that I'm in high demand. But there is a joke amongst graphic designers about platforms that you can tell were designed by a developer. They are not intuitive. They have all of the capabilities right there in front of your face the first time you go to see them, and it is overwhelming and hard to use typically. The beauty of UI UX design is coming in, figuring out the best way to use drop downs and buttons to organize information and capabilities into a way that a consumer can understand. If you are looking for somebody who can do a simple website for you, something like like my own personal website, which you can see here, then sure, you can go and hire a graphic designer, somebody who can give you this design, and then you can maybe go on to Squarespace and actually build it off of that design yourself, or you can work with them to go through that design. Another option is if you have a design eye, if you know kind of what you're looking for in terms of content and the way you want it to be laid out, then you can go and find just a developer. And that will possibly save you some money in the long run. But if you don't know what you're doing and you have a huge lofty idea with a selling platform and ads, and you want to show up #1 for cool shirts on Google, you're going to want to hire a whole team. And that includes someone who is a search engine optimization specialist. That includes a front end, a back end, a designer, and somebody who can wrangle all of those cats together. That way your idea becomes a cohesive product in the end.
For those listening at the moment, we have got show notes which will let you see the website that we were currently looking at. It's basically Sydney Ling's own website. It's a very nice design. I liked it. It stood out.
Thank you.
I was like, it was nice and easy to flow through it, and the information that you need is easily available, which is assigned to yourself, basically setting it out correctly for the end user. So it's great to see that. So going along this area now, there's a few different ideas and budgets that people will have. I've got another question lined up, which I'll ask you in a second, but I'll follow on to that. So thank you for the live question. Bear with me. Now, if we're looking at setting something like this up and we want to hire a professional, should we have, well, it's going to be a hard question, I'll say now, but based on what you do and the demographic you've got, is there a budget that someone can start with? So we've got a figure that someone on the lower end, and then obviously if it's a big company, they'd already have a budget, so they'll understand how much they need to spend going through their marketing department, etc. But for someone who is thinking about getting it done properly and using someone like yourself, what kind of budget are we looking at?
All right, so I will speak to 2 clients that I've had in the past. The first one was a construction startup. They were 2 guys and 5 employees. They had I think it was an 8-page website in total. And they needed full branding as well as a website and just a little bit of the cohesiveness between the two. So when I say branding, technically that is the image both online and your business identity, but they also needed, the logo, all of that stuff included in the branding. So their whole site ended up costing about $12,000 in the end, and that is because it ended up being a lot of little complex pieces and integrations that they needed specifically for their industry. Meanwhile, I had another client at the same time who was also a startup, and they are a law firm. They needed a static website, no integrations. That was about $2,000 if I remember correctly. So nothing, nothing to balk at, but definitely a very wide range of cost. You can get a website done for $400, but in the long run, it's going to look like $400. There are also different costs to keep in mind. For one, you're going to need, if you have nothing, if you are starting from absolutely nothing, the things that you as a customer need to get are your URL and your web host. Your URL is usually sold by your web host. A web host is something like GoDaddy or InMotion Hosting is who I use. There are tons of places out there that do web hosting. You can buy your URL through Google. You can buy it through GoDaddy, through InMotion Hosting. It's whomever. But those are the two things you got to get. And typically those run around $12 a year for a URL and somewhere between $60 to $200 a year for web hosting. On top of that, if you are going to use a content management system such as Wix or Squarespace, they have different pricings for different packages, and those will run you anywhere from, I'd say, probably $12 a month again, or $12 a month to, upwards of $200, $600 a month. It just depends on what you need. So those prices are not included in what I quote out typically. I will say, hey, by the way, this is stuff that you need to know and that will be coming your way, but it's not necessarily something that is in that final budget that goes to me. So when I come in and I say, hey, it's going to be $400 for this, $600 for that, you'll know what you're getting. And a good designer is not going to lump sum quote you for this stuff. A logo itself will run you anywhere from $400 to $1,200. A full branding package could be $600 to $6,000. I've done a website that was 120 pages and cost about, I think it was $27,000 by the end of it, and that didn't include any of the additional costs. Like
a lot of pages. What were they doing with that many pages?
They are what's it called? Apartment management company. So they had to have a single page for every unit or every building that they owned, and then additionally pages for all of those buildings for both residential and corporate. And then they also had another part of their website. So lots of stuff going on there. And that also included illustrations and integrations, all kinds of stuff. So the ideal budget, you are coming in, you want to spend bare minimum on your website. What I would tell you is pay $400 for a logo, pay, I would say $600 for someone to come in and do a bare minimum static website, static information, no integrations, no shopping platform, nothing super complicated. And you're going to hit 1,000 right there. So anything less than that, you're going to be, well, I won't say that you won't get something good, because you might. It's just that there are a lot of people out there who call themselves graphic designers, and there are not a lot of people out there who should be calling themselves graphic designers. There are plenty of us out there, and those of us who take a lot of pride in what we do and have invested in the professional title of graphic designer are really good, and we are always really excited to work with you. But there is a level of security that you need to have before hiring someone. And if they say they can get you a logo for $5, it's going to be a $5 logo.
That was going to be my next question. So for yourself as a professional, it might be very, I don't know, what's the correct word? It's very interesting to see people asking you for a quote. You give them a quote based on the quality that they're going to receive. And then they look at and say, wait a minute, I can get that on Fiverr for a lower amount. So they're comparing quality versus something that isn't really quality, like you mentioned. How do you deal with that when people are trying to maybe well, not comparing the same level of service with something that's inferior?
What I will tell you is that there are great illustrators on Fiverr. These are people who are going to take your prompt and they're going to turn around and give you 5 different logos. You're going to choose one of them. When I come in and I say, hey, let's do $400, $800 logo, I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to have a full hour-and-a-half long conversation about what your intentions are for this company. What is the message that you want to get out there? What's the feeling that you want to evoke when somebody purchases something from you? What colors psychologically evoke the best response that you can possibly get from somebody who's just seeing your logo out there for the first time. I have a full worksheet for just picking colors alone, and it all comes down to what are the feelings, what are the the messages that you're trying to send to people, and it's going to take me 2 weeks to 4 months to get you a logo. And in that time, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to give you 10 sketches right off the bat. And those first 10 sketches, you're going to say, I hate all of these. Give me another 10. The next 10 sketches, you're going to say, all right, I like 2 and I like 6. Let's see where we can further go with those. I'm going to come back with 10 of each. And right there, I've already gotten you 8 times as many options as your Fiverr person has gotten you. From there, we're going to refine, and we're going to reiterate everything. I'm going to reach out to potential users. I'm going to say, hey, taking a look at these 6 logos, which ones do you feel are the most trustworthy? Which ones do you feel are the most exciting? I'm going to take that information, come back to you and say, hey, we got really good responses on these, but not so good on these. Let's further iterate on these 2 and see where we go. 2 weeks to 4 months later, you're going to have a bomb logo that is going to then influence the way that you brand the rest of your company. It's going to influence the colors that we use on the website, the fonts that we use on your business card. It's going to even influence the way that we choose to speak on your website, whether it's corporate language or if it's fun and exciting, if it's big, loud words, or if it's muted with an artistic kind of feel to it. So a $5 logo is going to get you something that you can call a logo. A $400 logo is going to get you part of your brand.
Okay, so that's really nicely explained. I think to add to that further, it's basically luxury versus not luxury. So in every area of life, you can buy something really cheap, which gets the job done, or you could spend the time to actually know what you want and have something that lasts you a long time. Especially big brands, they invest a lot of time into this because it's important. As you get bigger, everything matters a lot more, and having that set up in the original place, it is actually good value based on what you've said. The amount of time you have to put into creating that logo, all that time in the background that the customer might not see, is actually reasonable. So that's something to think about when you're looking at your brands. Now, in this area, there will be times you have challenging customers or situations where the partnership doesn't go to plan. How do you deal with that when it's not actually going the way you want it to go?
Yeah, there is a saying amongst graphic designers that we all hate to hear, and is, I don't know what I want, but I'll know it when I see it. That tells me I'm going to do 10 first draft iterations of your logo, and then you're going to hate them all, and you're going to keep hating them all until I somehow magically pull this idea out of your brain. And it's going to take weeks, and it's going to take hours of my time that I'm not necessarily going to get paid for. The hardest part of working with people is that they're people. There is no one type of person that I can always say, I'm going to pick that person only as my client, and I'm going to say no to everyone else. There's no way to filter out who's coming to me for graphic design help. And I wish that I could, but it's what I get, and I got to get paid. So in the long run, what I've learned is that asking questions, like I mentioned earlier, asking questions is my biggest, greatest tool. The better I can be at asking the right questions, the better the answers are going to be from somebody that I'm working with. I remember in one of my first internships, I was doing an illustration for a company, and it was this polar bear on an iceberg. And the guy kept coming back and saying, it just doesn't feel cold enough. It's like not white enough. And I was like, boy, this is as white as the paper. I am printing this out on printer paper and you are looking at it and it is white. So eventually we figured out together by sitting down and actually having a conversation, what he actually wanted was for the iceberg to be significantly more blue, because the blue is evoking that cool feeling and it just wasn't quite right for him. But he, as not a creative person, didn't quite know how to get that idea out of his mouth. So it took a full conversation, and it was 20 minutes. And after that 20 minutes, we figured out exactly what he wanted and could have probably avoided, I don't know, 6 iterations of an illustration that took me cumulatively more than 6 hours to do. So that was a real learning moment for me. It's I can't just assume that I know what somebody wants. I have to make sure. And if that means that I'm asking you to fill out a survey that is 6 pages of different questions, then so be it. You're going to be happier with me in the end.
Okay, so that is interesting, like you say, because in the creative field, we can normally understand what we want, but someone coming into this, they can't, like you said, explain what they actually want. And having someone say, I know it when I see it. Wow,
Oh,
I
it's
could relate to
brutal.
that. Yeah. But I think going into that further now, that's similar to photography, logo design, a lot of different things, that product photography, that kind of area that people will struggle with. So based on what you've been doing so far, do you have any goals in terms of where you want to take this now, or what direction you want to go? Are you happy doing this? Because it's difficult. I can take on board how trying to
Yes.
get something out of someone, it can be like, oh my God.
Well, so I worked for myself starting in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. And I did that for about 2 years. And just recently, I started working for a new company. In this company, I am doing a lot more front end development than I've ever done in my life. I am working on a financial platform that has a ton of calculators and stuff for financial professionals. And I'm doing coding that I haven't done before, and it's going great. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm every night I go to my boyfriend and I say, "Oh my God, I just built this thing and you should see it." And he's like, "Sydney, it's a button that works." And I'm like, "Yeah, it works." So I would love to keep being this excited about what I do. And that is a blessing for me. I mean, gosh, to be able to say I love what I do is not something that everybody can say. And I'm very, very excited about that. I would love to keep doing this. Unfortunately, in graphic design, typically the path that the profession takes you is from graphic designer to senior graphic designer to art director. And an art director is basically somebody who wrangles graphic designers and sits with clients and asks them the questions, hey, what is it that you're actually looking for? Then they say, all right, designers, you guys are going to go and make this thing more blue instead of white because he actually wants it to be bluer instead of whiter. So that path isn't quite right for me. The path of just doing front end development also isn't quite right for me either. But this is something that I'm talking about 20 years and down the line. My dream would eventually be to work with nonprofit companies, charities, and the like. And I would love to be able to create a platform that gives a certain level of accessibility to everyone to having a web presence. I don't think that it should be hidden behind as many pay barriers as it is. And frankly, getting to understand the technology to a point where you can actually build yourself a website and all this stuff is also expensive, either in time or in the actual physical hardware that you need. And I would love to be able to figure out a way to make that more easily accessible for everyone. So that's a long-term dream, but with my fingers crossed and with some hard work, I'm sure I can make it there.
Sounds really exciting. So would that look like something you've created which allows other maybe charities to go on to, similar to like a WordPress type thing where they can sign up and create? Is that kind of the area you're looking at, like templates, or is it
Um,
more?
Possibly. My dream would probably be to have an organization, a company that does web development, graphic design, and branding and marketing for charities, and does so for free, or possibly for a very low price. And we'll see what happens. There's a lot of capital that I will need to raise in order to be able to do that. But That's the dream. For now,
And when it
I
comes
think
to that
that's
point, make sure to let me know because I'll
I
definitely put
will.
into the pot because I've got a company
Oh,
which does donate to charities. So I might
mhm.
not be able to put a lot in, but I'm sure I can help towards the cause because
Every
helping
dollar will
charities,
help.
it's something that everybody needs to do at some point. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're doing that. It's really,
Thank you.
really great. Now, bringing this to a bit of a close, I think based on our original topic we started off with, you've convinced me. So, you know,
Oh, good.
so I think listeners today, if you have a budget, you need to consider what you actually want. All the things we discussed today are very important. So you need to think about those and understand, is this what you want? How much budget have you got? Is it worth saving up to get someone to do it properly in the first place? Or should you maybe do something in the interim? That's something you can answer. So it's a very difficult area. Well, one more question for you. I'm going to bring you back. If
Sounds
people
good.
are interested in getting in touch with you, are you taking on clients and would you work on a website for like a
So
small?
I am working on very small projects right now. I'm full time with my new company, and it's a lot. I can take on really small projects, but something else that I offer is I offer free consultations for anybody who is a startup or just needs consultation, whatever it be. I also offer, and this is something that is pretty uniquely me, though I'm sure that you could talk to a designer friend that you might have as well. If you are looking to build your own website, if you think that you can handle it, but you're not quite sure, something that I offer is that if you want to, we can talk through a schedule or something like that, and set up a way where I can come in and work with you initially on the startup, and we say, all right. This is what I want. I'll tell you, all right, make these 3 pages. This is what I need. All right, use this content management system. And then a week later, we'll meet again and I'll say, all right, this is looking good. Here's what you need to change. That way, you are in control of building the website. You're also learning a lot about how to manage your own website. So when an image goes down, if it stops linking, you know how to get in there and re-upload that image and relink it to the right file. And I can come in and say, all right, all of this looks great, but your headline is a little too small, or this is breaking on mobile. Let's take a look here. And I usually offer that for anywhere from $40 to $60 for per meeting schedule, or per meeting, I should say. So it usually ends up being about $40 to $60. That way you come away just $40 lighter in your pocket, but you come away knowing how to manage your own website, maintain the website long term, how to edit things, and just generally a better understanding of what web development and design is. I'm really happy and excited to always offer these, and typically those meetings I have time for on Fridays, Saturdays, and occasionally a Sunday.
Okay, wow. So that's covering a big demographic there now because you've got a facility there to help the people that maybe can't afford it as much, but you're giving them a once over from a professional eye, putting them in the right direction. So that's really good as well. So I appreciate you speaking to us today. I will be putting all the show notes below how you can get in touch with Sydney, and there'll be a website there. If you have a LinkedIn, I can put a LinkedIn there possibly.
There's a LinkedIn somewhere out there, but you're
Okay.
going to get a lot more information from my website,
Okay.
sydneyling.com.
That's great. I'll put that in the show notes so you can use that. So I'd like to say thank you to my guest today. And next time we will be looking at a further episode around risk and having working for yourself. What's the best way to do that? So I'll see you in the next episode of zulftalks.com.